After nearly 4 years of wondering what on earth was going on with my little Jack Russell, I finally had some answers. And my experience was quite challenging during those nearly 4 years. I want to help you. If you're in the same situation that I was in with Bobby, for those 3.5, 4 years of just not knowing what was going on, I didn't know what the answers were. The main reason I wanted to do this video is, had I been able to watch a video like this in the early days when Bobby started having these episodes, it would have been amazing, because I would have been able to hear other people talk about it. I would have had a name. And the name means anything. It just means everything. When you don't know what you're dealing with, when you have a name, it just means everything. That might sound odd, but if you've been in this situation, you might understand that a little bit. May of last year, I still had no answers, and I was scrolling on Instagram, and I suddenly saw a video of a little dog having one of these episodes, and I literally screamed. I was like, oh my gosh, that's it, that's what Bobby has. And they had this name of paroxysmal dyskinesia. So I got straight onto the internet, researching, looking it up, and pretty much everything they had was Bobby. And I was like, I can't believe I have an answer. I literally cannot believe I have an answer. It's so hard when you are going through something, either yourself or with your dog, and you don't know what it is. You don't know, what could come next. Am I doing the right thing? Am I, is this going to get better? Is it going to get worse? Are there other things I need to look out for? You don't know any of that. All you know is what you experience. And it is really, really hard, especially with animals, because they can't talk to us. They can't sort of say, this hurts, or I feel like this, or, they can't tell us. I want to talk about my experience with Bobby, how it's affected Bobby, what I do to manage it. I knew I was managing, I was coping. I knew I'd worked out triggers for these episodes that I was calling them. The vets weren't sure what was going on. I showed them videos and they didn't recognise what was happening. Tests had been suggested, and I was reluctant to go down the test route for Bobby. Number of reasons. The first one is, firstly, once he'd come out of one of these episodes, he recovered very quickly, and it was as if nothing had happened. I guess at the most he was having maybe three a month. That was at the absolute most. Once I'd worked out the triggers, even before knowing what we were dealing with, once I'd worked out a lot of the triggers, we got down to maybe one every few months. So I was reluctant to do testing, because he was an older dog. Yeah, he was about 14, 15 when he had his first episode. And I didn't want to put him through tests. I didn't want him to have sedation. I didn't want him to have scans. The fact that he was recovering so quickly and there didn't appear to be any long-lasting issues for him with these episodes, my gut was saying don't put him through testing. And now that I know what it was, I'm really glad I didn't, because there are actually no tests for this. I've known him since 2008. And he was found as a stray, and a very good friend of mine took him in. And my friend very sadly then passed away in 2021. So Bobby came to live with me then. He was roughly about 14 years old. When he was found in 2008, the vets estimated he was about 12 to 18 months old. So he could be older. We just don't know. So I at the moment, I now say, where are we? We're now 2026. I now say Bobby is 18, maybe 19. So yeah, he's my little old man. The best way that you get a diagnosis is through video. When you have a video of one of these episodes and it's recognised by a vet neurologist, they recognise it and they can tell you straight away what it is. And it is called paroxysmal dyskinesia. It's taken me a while to get my head around that. It's also sometimes known as canine I have to get my tongue around this one as well. Canine epilepsy. I'm going to put it on the screen because I can never pronounce it. What's really funny is when I first saw Bobby having these episodes, I kept thinking it looks like he's cramping. I remember the very first one, maybe two he had, I just kept thinking, oh, he looks like he's got cramp. But then afterwards, what I was finding is he was walking fine. Once he'd sort of got his coordination back, he was walking fine. So I thought, actually, I don't think it is cramp, because I know when we get cramp, like if I sometimes can get really bad cramp in my calf or my toes, I can't walk properly for a little bit. Like you're a little bit limping, aren't you? So I wasn't quite sure. There is a webinar on here with some vet neurologists, and one of them is, they say he's one of the world leaders. He is phenomenal. There is so much information in this webinar, so I will link it below so you can have a watch of it as well. It was so fascinating to watch it. That obviously is talking in general from a vet neurologist point of view. What I want to do is I want to tell you about my experience with Bobby. So first of all, you don't feel quite so alone if you're going through this with your dog. There are also some fabulous support groups. I found one on Facebook. Again, that was amazing because I was able to talk to people about what I was going through with Bobby and getting their experiences, their advice. But obviously to do all of that, you need a name, don't you? So it's so hard because the only way I used to be able to describe them to people is I used to say, he has these episodes, his legs get stuck in the air, his neck sometimes gets stuck, he stays conscious, his bowels and his bladder stay, he doesn't lose control of them, and he recovers very quickly, and then it's as if nothing's happened. As he's coming out of the episode, he'll be licking his lips, and then it stops, and he, like the leg movements and all that stop. He will walk around a little bit disorientated for maybe a minute or two, and then he is like, nothing's happened. That's how I used to describe them to people, and then I would show people the videos. And people would look at you and go, oh, is that epilepsy? And I'm like, no, I know it's not epilepsy because he stays conscious. That is one of the big defining differences between seizures and these episodes, is with these episodes, they stay conscious. You know, they don't foam at the mouths, they don't lose control of their bladders or their bowels. Bobby has had one seizure. I'm praying that that was an absolute one-off. I don't think there is any definite link between them. You know, I think there's quite a few dogs that have paroxysmal dyskinesia that have never had a seizure. So what I want to do is I want to just go through, talk about my experiences with Bobby and see if it helps. The first thing with Bobby is when he is about to have one, what I have realised over time, and it took me a little while to work out, first of all, to recognise the signs and then to work out the triggers. It took me a while. So I started keeping a diary. It's brilliant. That is absolutely everything because you can see everything that's happening. Like if he had one, I would jot down, you know, what's happened in the last 24, 48 hours before an episode, so I can start to sort of see any patterns. Yeah, if you do have anything unusual with your dog and it's happened a couple of times, just start journaling everything. So what I found with Bobby is to start off with, he'll get restless and he will try to find me. So if I'm on the sofa, sometimes he'll go and sort of snuggle up at the other end of the sofa. If he's next to me, then it's fine because he just sort of snuggles back into me and he just gets up and he walks around in a circle, and then he lays down and he gets up and walks around in a circle, and I can tell that we're about to have one. If he is on the other end of the sofa, or if he's sort of like in his bed and I'm at my desk or something, he will start coming towards me. He'll try to get near me, and he just has a certain, I can't even describe it, he has a look on his face. It's like he's saying, Mummy, it's about to happen. He just has a look on his face, and I just know now. So that is the start of it. And then depending on where he is, so if he's on the sofa or if he's on the floor, what tends to happen is if he's sat down, he kind of shuffles, and you can see it's involuntary. He doesn't want to do it. He's kind of shuffling backwards. Yeah, I don't think I've got any of that bit on video because that's always the very early stages. And 99% of the time when he's had episodes, it's just me and him. So I do have some videos. So I'm going to insert some video clips. He then starts with a bit of a head tilt, and it's a weird one because his sort of like his head tilts, but it's not a sort of like a, you know, if he's being cute and he's looking at me like cute, like it's not that sort of, it's almost like the head is locked in place and the neck goes like, it really sort of cramps and you can see it's uncomfortable. So that starts. And then he starts with his paws, and it's front legs, and you'll see in some of the videos, he just like the front leg goes, if you imagine dog's leg is down like this, it literally goes up like this and it gets stuck. It's like he's cramping and in spasm. He stays conscious though, and it's so bizarre to see because cognitively he's very aware of what's going on. Sometimes, and my interpretation of this is the more intense ones are when his neck will get really locked into place and his neck will almost turn fully back towards his bottom and his neck is just totally stuck. Like if you gently place your hand, you can feel that you can feel it is locked in place. That seems to only be, again, that doesn't happen every time, and I don't think I have any video of his neck cramping because I think when he gets to that point, I put my phone down because I just want to be there with him. And as I say, 99% of the time I'm on my own. I think my dad's been here once. I think I've had a couple of friends that have been with me a handful of times, but majority of the time it is just me and Bobby. So the neck is, the neck doesn't happen every time. I think the neck is when it's a more serious episode for Bobby. He then sometimes, not all the time, and I find it's towards the sort of like the latter part of the episode, his back legs will start sort of doing this. Sorry, that sounds really odd, doesn't it? But his back legs will sort of get a bit stuck. It's as if he's got a bit of cramp and he's trying to sort of, get it out or something. So that's those. He does get a very glazed look in his eyes. He's cognitively aware, so he's looking around. He's, he doesn't whimper. He doesn't cry. He doesn't salivate at his mouth or anything. I think he's confused. I think he's a little bit frightened about what's going on. That's really hard to see. What I have realised for Bobby, he doesn't particularly like to be picked up. I'm wondering if it makes him feel really disorientated if I pick him up, because my instinct is I want to pick him up and cuddle him. What he does like is to be on the floor or on the sofa next to me, and he'll sort of try to cuddle into me, around his legs doing what they need to be doing. The licking is really interesting. So with Bobby, he starts licking his lips, and I know that's the sign that he's coming out of the episode. His episodes, sometimes they literally will last a minute. I've never timed any of them because, again, I'm on my own with him and I'm concentrating on looking after him. From the times where I have videoed them, I haven't had a video go over about 4 minutes. So, and that feels about right, that does, for sort of typically how many when he does have them. So I would say his vary from sort of like a minute to 4 or 5 minutes at the most. You may have heard of cluster episodes. So a cluster episode is where they have one and then they have a second one within 24 hours. Bobby has had a couple of cluster episodes. I would say the cluster ones tend to be after something major. I'll talk about the triggers in a minute, and that'll make a little bit more sense. They can happen anytime, day or night. I have woken up in the night. He's upstairs in the bedroom, in his own bed on the floor, and I've woken up in the night to him having one. Thankfully, I'm a very light sleeper with Bobby. I wake up as soon as he makes the slightest noise, I wake up. When he's at home on his own, this is a bit part of my management with them, just to protect him. When he is at home on his own, he is here in the kitchen. There's a gate on the kitchen door, so he can't get out, because my main concern was stairs. If he were to go up and down the stairs and have an episode, I'd be terrified of him hurting himself. And he can't jump up on the sofa anymore with his age. But when he used to be able to jump up and down on the sofa, I was always worried about him having one on the sofa when he's at home on his own and then attempting to jump down from the sofa to look for me and hurting himself. I've got a camera on him, So if I'm out and about, the camera will trigger if he moves, and I can check and I can see. I've only ever seen him have one on the camera when he's been at home on his own. And I watched it the whole time, and thankfully, it was a very short one, and it finished and he just walked back to his bed and went to sleep. So yeah, I think because it woke him up, he was probably, I think he was in deep sleep when it started. It happened, and he just went, thankfully, he just went straight back to his bed, and I was able to sort of get home as quickly as possible to him. Sometimes he'd go a month in between, and then sometimes he would be having one a week, and that would go on for, maybe a month, and then maybe it would be 6 weeks later he'd have one, and then it'd be a week later. So there was no rhyme or rhythm at that point. I didn't see there was any rhyme or reason. There were triggers, and the diary helped me work those out, thankfully. When I've worked out the triggers, again, now through management, because I know what a lot of his triggers are, through management, Bobby has not had one since November. The time before that was September, I think. I think he'd had one in September, and then prior to that was probably a good few months. So I would say now, in the last year, I reckon he's probably had 4, maybe 5 in the last year, which is a massive improvement. A lot of the triggers, which I'll talk about in a moment, a lot of the triggers tend to be very similar for a lot of dogs that have paroxysmal dyskinesia. Emotional stress is a massive one for Bobby, and it took me a while to work this out. So if something is emotionally stressful for him, I now know with almost, I would say, 80% certainty, within half an hour to an hour, he will have an episode. That could be anything from, I know I shouldn't, I laugh about it because now, once he was okay, I was like, that was quite funny, Bobby. So he has always been quite friendly with a lot of my neighbours' cats, and they quite often come in the garden. And oh gosh, we used to have one cat where she used to come and meow at the back door. I would say, can Bobby come out and play? And he'd go out in the garden, and they just tooted around the garden together. And there was one day where he was quite lively, and I was sat on the sofa. I had the back door open. I was sat on the sofa watching them, and they were just pootling around the garden together. And he got a bit lively, and he suddenly turned, and he just ran at her quite playfully, but I think it took her aback, like shocked her a little bit, because she hissed at him, and she's like that. Anyway, he sort of stopped in his tracks like this. He turned around and he flew into the house, jumped up onto the sofa, and he just looked at me as if to say, "Mummy, did you see what she just did to me?" And he was just so stunned at what this cat had. I mean, she didn't touch him. But I think as well, because he was quite sort of like hyper, as in the two of them had been sort of playing, and they used to dart around, and what he had done, they've done before, and she would do that at him. She used to sort of like suddenly leap into the air towards him, and so that was kind of how they used to play. I don't know whether she was just having a bad cat day that day. I don't know. But I think he just took her by surprise. Anyway, he then just sort of sat on the sofa with me. I said, well, you just stay in here with me. She's obviously having a bad day. You just stay in here with me, and we'll let her wander around the garden on her own. So he sat on the sofa with me, and within 10 minutes he was having an episode, which it was interesting, really interesting. And I just think the emotional sort of shock of it, I'm like, Mummy, what did she do to me? More serious ones are, I was out walking him, and just down the road from where I live, 2 big dogs came flying out from where they live, no collars, no owner, and they were big dogs. And Bobby's he's about 5.5 kilos. He's tiny, and they flew at us, and I always feel sick when this happens. I've only ever had to do it with Bobby twice, and this is the reason I always walk him on harness and lead. I literally just had to whip him up into the air like that with the lead and the harness to get him out of their way. Bobby was screaming because he was scared. I was really shocked. It was a horrible experience. He wasn't hurt, thankfully. Neither of us were hurt, and the owner came out and just about managed to get control of her dogs. Anyway, came home and 15 minutes later, he was having an episode. So yeah, so that was more serious side. He never used to like go into the groomers. I'd come home from the groomers and I mean, nothing traumatic. You know, he just didn't like it. He didn't enjoy it. More often than not, all the time, but more often than not, he would have episodes. And I then stopped taking him to the groomers, and my mum and I were, I mean, I'm no professional groomer. My mum and I would clip him. I'd clip him. My mum would be the vending machine. She'd just like keep giving him the munchies that I bake for him, and he'd be fine. So that was interesting. He had a couple of times when he came home from vets and he'd just gone to the vets for like general checkups rather than going because he was poorly. And yeah, he'd come home and he'd have an episode. From a management point of view, I watch emotional triggers really carefully. And sometimes life happens. We can't always avoid, it's life, isn't it? We can't always avoid it. So if anything happens and I think that's been quite emotionally stressful for Bobby, then I watch him like a hawk. I'm so careful with him just to be on the safe side. And then the other one that's interesting is physical stress. Now, physical stress for Bobby is any injury or illness will trigger an episode. He was racing around in the garden one day and he was just having one of those moments. He was just going a bit loopy around the garden and he came flying into the house through the hallway, and in the hallway I've got a chest of drawers, and the bottom drawer knob, just as he raced past it, he just caught his shoulder on it, and that obviously just, I think he did give it a bit of a bash, and he yelped out, and yeah, that obviously gave him a bit of a shock, and he was walking fine. I think he probably just ended up with a little bit of a bruise. Within 20 minutes he had an episode. That was another one. Illness is a massive one for Bobby. Now, part of paroxysmal dyskinesia is they have massive gut and tummy issues. And I'll talk about that in a minute. And it's awful, the tummy issues that they can have. So if Bobby has what I call a PD tummy episode, almost every time it will trigger a episode, if that makes sense. So yeah, so that's massive. And then the other things, any physical stress. Now, to start off with, it took me quite a while to work this one out because I was having to sort of process of elimination, trying to work out what all these triggers were. One of them, and it took me a while to work this one out, it was actually flea and tick treatments. Whenever I was putting a flea and tick treatment and wormer treatment on the back of his neck, within 24 hours, he'd have an episode. And sometimes those ones would be cluster ones as well. Not every time, but sometimes they would be cluster ones. Now, because he was having sometimes a couple a month, I didn't always connect it with the flea and wormer treatment. So that was one. And then the other one that is massive for him is gluten. Dogs with paroxysmal dyskinesia, there's been quite a few studies and it's mostly been with border terriers. Border terriers can basically have a big gluten allergy if they have paroxysmal dyskinesia. I don't think it's massively been studied too much in other breeds. I think it is definitely an issue for Bobby. Now, the reason I first cut out gluten for him is when he first came to live with me, he used to lick his paws all the time, constantly licking his paws. I just thought, you know what, again, as process of elimination, I'm just going to cut out gluten, see if it makes a difference. And that stopped the paw licking. And I thought, well, that's really interesting. So I then basically kept him on a gluten-free diet. Obviously, because there were other triggers for Bobby, cutting out the gluten didn't stop them totally. But what I have realised is once I've worked out all the triggers, there's been a couple of occasions where Bobby has had gluten by mistake and it's triggered an episode. I'm absolutely certain gluten is an issue for Bobby. He's not had any of the genetic testing done, but I'm absolutely certain that gluten is an issue for Bobby. So the majority of people that have this issue with their dog, the advice is cut out gluten. Other ones from a nutritional point of view is beef is horrendous for Bobby. Beef is, we've had, and again, because I didn't realise it was the beef, I've had I think it's been 3 emergency vet visits with Bobby because the beef just, it was horrific, absolutely horrific. I mean, sorry if you're eating too much information. He literally projectile vomited 6 feet, and he's a little 5.5 kilo dog. And I was stunned at how much vomiting and diarrhea there was in this poor little dog. So yeah, I was on the phone with the vets at 2 o'clock one morning because it was just so horrific. And he is massively uncomfortable. He's in so much pain with it. It was just horrific. I honestly thought I was losing him. There was a couple of times where he had such a bad allergy or reaction to it. I honestly thought I was losing him. And that would then trigger an episode, normally within a few hours. He'd have an episode on top of the sickness. He also would get the most horrific tummy cramps. So you could see what he would do is he would sort of stretch his body out. It's almost like he's trying to stretch his tummy to get away from it. Stomach cramps were awful. What I will do is I'll insert some videos, and it was actually my dad suggested this to me. I have got, between Bobby and I now, I think we've got about 4 or 5 of these, the wheat bags that you can buy that you pop in the microwave. My dad suggested, he said, try popping one of those on his tummy, just heat it in the microwave so it's warm rather than hot. And I popped that on his tummy, and it made a massive, massive difference. You'll see in the video, he's laying down and he's shaking because his tummy's in so much pain. I pop the heat pad on his tummy and it just calms him straight down. And now as soon as I think he's got a PD tummy, I get the heat pad on straight away. And it does make a big, big difference. And he likes it as well. He'll seek it out, like he knows that it feels comfortable and it helps him, I think. So if I pop it down, he'll really cuddle into it. The other thing that I realised through the support group is a lot of people were saying rub honey into their gums. So you need to get good quality local honey, and you just rub it into their gums when they are either having an episode where they're having a cramping episode as such, or if they've got tummy problems, just rub it into their gums and it helps. Yeah, I don't think anybody really understands why. Tip, we're going to find some local honey and keep it in your cupboard at home. The other thing that, and again, this took me a little while to work out. So once I'd removed the beef, once I had removed a few of the other triggers, at that point I was starting to get suspicious of the flea and wormers, so I decided to remove those as well. And I was sort of slowly starting to see the episodes reducing in their numbers. But what was happening is Bobby was still getting sporadic sickness. It wasn't horrific. It definitely wasn't full blown as in when he had beef, but he was still getting it, and it was very sporadic. So it might be once a week, nothing serious. I just thought, what, I'm still not quite happy that we've got this sorted. So I was mainly feeding him chicken, and I just thought, I'm just going to cut out the chicken and see what happens. And something so, so interesting happened. Now, Bobby, for about 18 months, every night, Bobby had been waking me up between 1 and 3 times a night and all he wanted was to go out in the garden for a wee. And it was tiring. I survived on a lot of caffeine. I put it down to his age, and I just, I thought it's fine. It's just, it's his age. He can't go that long with his bladder, and it's fine. As soon as I cut out the chicken, and because he was having chicken pretty much every day, I stopped the chicken, and he straight away stopped waking up at night. And that just blew my mind, that did. Absolutely blew my mind. The only thing I can think of is that the chicken was possibly causing his tummy to feel a little bit uncomfortable, enough to wake him up, and then he wakes up, and like all of us, we wake up, oh, I need to go to the loo. So I do wonder if that was the case with him, because now, I mean, gosh, some nights I'll go to bed at 9:30 and we'll get up at 6:30, 7 o'clock, and he's fine. He'll go the whole night without needing to go downstairs into the garden. So yeah, that was really fascinating, that was. What I did do is I made the decision to actually stop dog food and to start cooking everything for him myself. And that was one of the best decisions I made, because I was trying so many different brands of dog food, really high quality, expensive brands. I was trying the sort of the main high street gluten-free ones, and I couldn't get on top of this sickness and the episodes. So even once I'd removed the chicken, he was still having a little bit of sickness, wasn't waking at night, but still a little bit, and things just still weren't quite right. And I thought, you know what, I'm just going to have a go at cooking all of his food myself. And that was amazing, that was. The food that he has now is he has turkey, he has sweet potato, he has broccoli, he has white fish, he has scrambled egg, and turkey bone broth as well. And that pretty much is it. I find anything else is triggers either sickness, diarrhea, or it triggers an actual physical episode. He likes it, and he gets really excited about it. He loves, like, I steam the sweet potato for him. He loves that with his turkey. You know, he loves his scrambled egg. He loves scrambled egg. Scrambled egg goes everywhere. He walks around, he's still got it in his beard, and that always makes me laugh. The scrambled egg's really good for them as well, and so is bone broth. Bone broth is amazing for them. Really, really good for, like, neurological. It's good for their gut. It's good for their skin. It's just, yeah, bone broth is amazing for them. Good for them, really good for their cognitive function. Bobby, obviously, with his age, he does have cognitive decline. I want to do everything I can to just support him and give him the best nutrition that I can that works with works with his tummy issues and works with his paroxysmal dyskinesia. Now, one thing that I have found that's really interesting is with Bobby's cognitive decline, he has sort of moments, and it has progressed. It is getting a lot more, it's not all the time, but it is getting a lot more over the last few months, where he wanders around and I'll find him and he'll just be stood there staring at a wall, or he'll go into corners and he just sort of is staring at them. And I just sort of go over, pick him up, and, sort of get him with me and things like that. And I've often sort of wondered, is he struggling when that's happening, or is he just in a little world of his own and he's not really, he's okay with it, if that makes sense. And then I suddenly realised today, I was actually jotting down notes for this so I wouldn't forget anything. And I suddenly thought, actually, because I know emotional stress is a trigger for him, when he is wandering around and he's getting himself a bit disorientated around the house, or he's, staring at a wall or something along those lines, that's never triggered an episode. I hope that means that he's not emotionally stressed when that's happening. I'm quite intrigued about that one, and I hope it does mean that he's not emotionally distressed when that's happening. Now, there's a few things that I have noticed with these episodes. So I have been able to stop a few of them, and that, when I realised that was massive. So for Bobby, what I have realised is if I can interrupt the episode when it's in the very, very early stages, I'm not going to say every time, because there's been a few times where it hasn't stopped. A lot of the times, if I can get to it early, I can stop the episodes. And how I found this out was really funny. So I was in the kitchen one day, I was cooking, and he was sort of behind me. And all of a sudden he started having an episode, and I turned around because I wanted to come over towards him and to comfort him. And as I turned around, one of his little tennis balls was on the kitchen floor, and my foot just caught it and it shot across the kitchen floor. And he was like, "Whoa, tennis ball!" And he was in the middle of an episode. His legs were doing all of this, and he was trying to play with the tennis ball. I was like, "What is he doing?" literally, what is he doing? And he started playing with he was really trying to play with the tennis ball, but, his legs were doing all of this. And then it just kind of stopped. The episode just stopped and he carried on. He was very disorientated, but he was playing with the tennis ball. He was trying to knock it around. He was trying to chase it. And I was like, well, that was interesting. Yeah, I really didn't know what to make of that. And this was before I'd found out what it was called and before I sort of was able to talk to others. So I just thought, okay, well, let me have a look, see if we can do this again. So I've done it a couple of times where he's been in the very early stages and I've either got a toy and started like squeaking a toy, and that's brought him out of it. There was one time it started and I was near his harness, so I quickly picked his harness up and I was like, come on, let's go for a walk. And he got excited and that stopped the episode. He's done some funny things as well. So there was one time he was in the kitchen. I'd put some food down for him. He was in the kitchen and I had popped into the living room and I came back into the kitchen. He was stood at his food bowl. He was eating, but his leg was like this. And he was in the middle of an episode and he was eating. And again, I was like, okay. I was like, I think I need to take the food away from you just for safety. But yeah, so that was interesting. That was, again, and then a few other people have noticed the same thing, that if they can get to it soon, as soon as it started pretty much, they've been able to bring their dogs out of it. I have done it once where one started on the sofa and I literally went, Bobby, 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 and got really excited and was clapping, and it sort of interrupted him and it sort of shocked him a little bit, and that brought him out of it. So that's that's definitely worth trying for your dogs. So from a management point of view, so I've talked about obviously keeping Bobby safe. That for me was massive. Avoiding triggers. So yeah, the triggers were massive. Avoiding the triggers. And then also just keeping life as calm for him as possible. So I made his world quite small. Didn't expose him to big exciting things. I stopped taking him to things like coffee shops and pubs and restaurants and things like that. So many things could have happened that would have been out of my control there. Like if we were in a coffee shop and somebody dropped something and there was a loud crash and it startled him. Yeah, so that was the main reason. We just did lots of really fun things at home. Like we go over to my parents' house. He has a lot of fun at my parents' house. We'd go for little walks, but whenever I was taking him for walks, I would take him somewhere where I had good visibility. So if there were, especially because he's so little, so if there were big dogs around, I didn't want big dogs charging up to him and, emotionally triggering him. Food triggers, so I only cook food for him and I only cook now what I know he can tolerate. I don't experiment with anything new. I don't think, oh, let me give that a go, because the 1 or 2 times I've done that, it's backfired. It's not gone to plan. If it has brought up any questions for anybody, if you're watching this going and you've seen the videos and you're like, that is my dog. So if you do hear anybody, even if it's not yourself, if you hear somebody saying that their dog's had, a bit of a funny episode, they stay conscious and it looks like they're possibly about to have a seizure, but they don't, tell them to video it. It's the best way for neurologists to be able to help them and give them the answers that they need. I did mention briefly earlier as well, Bobby did have a seizure. That was emotionally triggered, really, really startled me. It didn't startle me, it was unbelievably traumatic. In November of last year, Bobby was out in the garden with me. It was a really nice day for November, and I thought I'm going to do one final cut of my lawn. Now, since Bobby has come to live with me, I would say 90% of the time that I've cut the grass, he's always been in the garden with me. He's never been bothered by the lawnmower. Sometimes he'll be laying in the grass and I literally mow around him or I have to pick him up, put him down here and say, let me mow this bit, and then he'll come back, and he's just never ever been bothered by the lawnmower. And yeah, a few friends have seen it and they're like, that's crazy. That's, they can't believe that I literally have to mow around him. Obviously, I don't get too close to him because, yeah, blades and all that sort of stuff. That always, I don't get too close to him. But I literally, he's just never been fussed by the lawnmower. So in November of last year, I was out and I was like, oh, I'm going to do one more cut of the lawn. So he came out, he was out in the garden, he was just pottering around, and I was mowing, and then all of a sudden he just started screaming. I've only ever heard him, my aunt's Jack Russell do it, and then I've heard greyhounds do it. And I know a lot of people that they literally call it the scream of death, and it is horrendous. If you've ever heard a dog do it, it's awful. It is horrendous. And Bobby started doing that. Now he has done that in the past with certain things. If something really frightens him, he literally will go into this scream of death. I can then pick him up. He'll be really manic. Sometimes he won't even let me pick him up. He'll be running around screaming, but it normally would only last a minute or so. And quite often when he was starting to calm down, I could pick him up, stroke him, calm him down. That would then subsequently trigger an episode, just from him getting emotionally stressed. What happened on this one though is he started his screaming. I obviously stopped mowing straight away, picked him up, brought him in the house, and he was screaming. He wouldn't calm down, and then he just started seizuring. He started having a full seizure, and that was horrific. That was, I'm sure there's some of you out there that are watching this and you've witnessed a dog or even a person having a seizure, and it was horrific for Bobby. Yeah, it was awful. I obviously got him to the vet. Thankfully, he came through it because I was so worried about his heart because of his age, and I know he's got quite a severe heart murmur. I was so scared about his heart. But thankfully he came through it, and thankfully, touch wood, I'm sat here at my kitchen table, thankfully, touch wood, he's not had another one. I just have to pray that he doesn't have another one. He did that night, he had a paroxysmal dyskinesia episode. When I brought him home from the vet, we'd been home about an hour and he had an episode, and I was expecting that. I was, fully prepared for that and expecting that. So yeah, as I said earlier, I don't think there is a direct link from what I have heard between paroxysmal dyskinesia and epilepsy or full seizures. I know in our support group a few people have experienced both with their dogs. I don't think there's a direct link. So yeah, it doesn't mean your dog will have full seizures. If there are any questions, pop them below. I am always here. I can pop a link to the Facebook support group as well. There's some incredibly knowledgeable people in there, and they have been absolutely incredible for supporting me and helping me and answering questions. And as I said earlier, one of the most amazing things for me was I'd been managing this with Bobby for sort of almost 4 years. I didn't have a name. I didn't know what we were dealing with. I just knew how it was affecting Bobby, and I'd worked out triggers. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know if it was going to get worse. I didn't know if it would just go away. I didn't know if it would lead on to something else. You just don't know. It was tough, and emotionally it was hard as well. What I will do, because this video is quite long, I'm going to put timestamps below. You've watched it and then you want to go back and re-watch a point, so you've got those. But as I say, if anybody has any questions, I'm always here, so just pop a message below, pop a comment below, and I'm happy to answer questions. And again, as I said, I'm not a medical professional. I'm an owner of a gorgeous little Jack Russell, and I just wanted to share my experience with him, and if it helps somebody else that has been going through this, then that would be amazing.